Hey everyone, we are back. Right. Oh, I'm still getting over the fact that we are here in this magnificent stadium. It's kind of freaking me out, but in a very, very good way. Right, the next panel is entitled The Future of Women's Professional Football, What We Need to Do to Realise the Game's Potential. Really important subject, this, one of my favourite ones as well. And just to put it into a bit of context, when COVID struck, there were genuine fears around the future of women's football worldwide, despite recent improvements and developments. And FIFPro, World Players Union, were amongst those to really strike that cautionary tone. And in fact, a survey that they conducted really backed up their concerns. Their findings showed that in 47% of countries where surveyed, women footballers had wages cut or suspended. In 40% of countries, players received no mental or physical health support. In 69% of countries, communication with players was regarded as poor or very poor. But there are two sides to every story, and at the same time, there were several actions and signs of hope. Clubs, leagues, even governments started making special and innovative efforts to try and support women's football during this time of crisis. And broadcasters too have shown their backing. In fact, I was just chatting with one of our speakers about this off stage in the UK. Sky and the BBC struck a groundbreaking agreement with the FA to share live coverage of the top division of women's football, the WSL in England, DAZN live streaming the Women's Champions League this season as well. But there is still plenty of work to do, still ground to make up, and lots to discuss in this session. So, without further ado, let me introduce our moderator for this session, freelance host and presenter, and friend as well of mine, Eugenia Carolyi. Please give a warm welcome to her and the following: Senior Project Manager at Portas Consulting, Thomas Fleureau; VP Consumer Strategy and Implementation at DAZN, Arbessa Castrati; Senior Women's Football Manager at UEFA, Emma Sykes; and Head of Liga MX Femenil, Mariana Gutierrez. Please give them a warm welcome, everyone. Thank you very much indeed. Eugenia, what a pleasure to see you. Over to you.
It's mine, David. Thank you. Thank you for that welcome, and thank you all for being here. I'm super honored to be sitting on stage with three super empowered women in football, not just of women's football, but in football in general. And I'm actually very, very happy to see a very brave man up here who is the best person to tell us the potential of women's football and why, and the reason why we're all here talking about this very subject today. So welcome, Thomas, as well.
Thank you very much, Eugenia, and very, very good to be here. I think, yeah, the first question is, what is the real potential? What is the value? And a lot of people have tried to answer that question, but I think we've got to look at it away from what we already know, and what is the real future value? What is the real future audience? What is going to drive the game is obviously more revenue, more investment, more funding going into the game. And that is typically driven by more audiences, more eyeballs. And I think we hear a lot of statistics. 1 billion people watch the Women's World Cup. It's a great statistic, but it didn't translate into viewership necessarily at the domestic level. So we shouldn't kind of lose our focus and our attention, and we should really try to understand what's going to be the fandom tomorrow. There's obviously people who already love football, the men's game, who might convert, but they're not, I think, the only people, and there's also a new audience that can be tapped in. And it's not only women, it's women, men who might align with the values, who might recognize the approachability of the players, who might love women's football for its own specificities. So I think there's a lot of value to be captured, and it's important to shape the game in a way that is going to talk to these new audiences and shape it in a way that will generate incremental value, not just value that already exists in football, but new value for the women's game.
Yeah, I think that there's definitely data that we will discuss, right, Emma? I think we have passionate people about the subject here, and with hard data to actually back up the arguments of why women's football is a potential and it's a product in itself, and what are the opportunities to build on it and not just replicate what has been done in the game. Arbessa, in your case with media, I think it's one of the main things to create the reach, to create the audience and the engagement, as they were speaking in the previous panel, to actually create out of women's football a potential opportunity for stakeholders and investors and audience and the game in itself, to create one game, not just men's football, women's football, but it's one game, and we're all here to elevate that.
Yeah, absolutely. We were actually talking earlier about the fact that we really need to get the basics right. We were speaking about some data points and comparing the research that we've done, but I think you said 46% of the audience of women's football was actually males, right?
Women.
Women, exactly. So there's more male audience. So the fact that there's only a woman audience is completely absurd. But beyond that, I think the key problem here is coverage and visibility. We currently don't know where to go and watch women's football. We don't really know about the athletes. We don't know about their stories, especially in comparison to men's football. And the skill set is very much there. I was very shocked to find out that we have 4% of total coverage is on women, and women represent 40% of all the athletes in football. So there's a massive gap there that we really need to work together as a team to close off. And as a broadcaster, as a media company, we are definitely making strides to close that gap, and we'll speak to our UEFA partnership in a second. But I think it goes beyond. I think it's everyone in this room. I mean, the audience is majority male here. It really isn't representative to women in the industry as well as women globally. We're 50% of the population. So why are we not all more involved in creating that visibility, being interested? You know, the broadcasters need to show the games. We need to show them end to end. Netflix won't just debut a series and show the season finale.
Yeah.
Like, how can we grow demand if we're just looking at, you know, the final match? There's a whole narrative and a story to be told throughout the seasons, and that's exactly where we're hoping DAZN's really going to step in and help close that gap as much as possible.
Yeah, I think it's curious that you mentioned that right here, the audience, it's probably predominantly male. But if you go to a stadium nowadays, I don't think it really represents what it is. You see a lot of women, and it's like thinking women's football is for women, like men's football is for men. No, I think that the more that we go to the stadiums nowadays, especially in Europe, and even more, and now more and more in Latin America, like Mariana can explain to us, it's not like women's football is just for women or men's football is just for men. Like us as women, it's not like we just work in women's football. We work in football in general. We're women in football, and Thomas is here working and talking about women's football. So it's one game, and we're here to develop it. And in Emma's case, she has very good statistics about not just the viewership of women's football, but the female viewership of men's football as well, that I think that translates into the growth of women's football in general, right?
Yeah, I think that if we just think of this trajectory that women's football has been on, particularly, I think you asked me earlier what has happened since like 2017, the Netherlands, which was the Women's European Championship, which was really a watershed moment in terms of growth in so many areas, because we talk right now about the visibility, but in reality, the growth is in every single element of the game. And I think it's really important to remember that it's all linked, and you can't have one without the other. But if I told you that in the last 4 years, you know, there's 4 times more women and girls are playing football at a faster rate than boys and men, that's a huge statistic. And we talked about like potential. From a European perspective, there's a huge potential if we have that continued amount of growth. Because if we don't have those girls playing, then we won't have a professional product to sell, to watch, and for girls to aspire to. But you know, we see more and more professional female players, but we also see, a little bit to your point about male allyship, it's not just about the individuals, but we see a lot more men's clubs. I think maybe 46%, I think, of top division men's clubs in Europe have a women's team now. And this is a trend that's growing year on year, and that's really also allowing kind of access to structures and to coaching and facilities, which is much needed in the women's game. But all this kind of growth has happened because we've worked collectively, maybe organically, maybe not within the same direction and the same vision, and that's something that I think we need to still for the future, because if we keep doing what we're doing, we won't reach that point that we're really trying to get to.
100%. Well, in Mariana's case, Mariana is here also because she received the WFS Award for Innovation and Incentive Creating a Women's League in Liga MX in Mexico. So I would say that we start with you talking about how do you build, innovate, doing a league, a women's league, to differentiate what has been done in the male game and in the males league in Mexico in this case. What are you doing different that got you to Madrid today with an award and also on this panel? We're super proud to have you here as well today.
Thank you, Eugenia, and it's nice to be sharing this panel with all of you guys. And we were talking with Thomas that it would be common sense, but we're talking about the same formula, but you were just saying the storytelling. We have the same rules, the same game, but we have different audience and different athletes, so the demands are different. So what we did in Mexico is we have the same stakeholders, the same 18 clubs, and what we did was study the best practices and implement them. So, for example, next week we're launching our first youth competition. Clubs understand now that they need to invest, and that's something that's, I find, the most challenging thing in the women's game is sometimes you have to change the idea that they think, or we think, that we are spending money instead of investing, and something that's probably right now one of the hottest topics in the world, right? So, for example, in Mexico, we have reached more than 30 million people in a country of 120 million people, right? So the opportunity is how we reach the other 90 million people. But the half of them are women. So we're talking of a whole new industry, you know, that we're investing in new industry, new equipment, new jerseys, new fans. These 15 million women are new female fans. How are we going to talk to them? What's the storytelling? How we demand? And also learning and understanding on our female athletes. The investment we have to do is in multiple areas of just not growing the game, it's growing the industry and doing and building a new economy, right? So we think we're doing the things in the right way. And something, as we were talking with Thomas, is strategy. I think, and every business woman or businessman is going to tell you, you need to have a strategy. And we are unaware sometimes that we don't have a strategy. The important thing is where we want to go. And we have very clear in Mexico that where we want to go in 2027, and then stop, analyze, and start building the next steps.
I think the Mexican Women's League has grown so much in the last 4 years. Well, since they started, it's what, your 5th season now?
Yeah, next year is going to be our 5th anniversary. Yeah,
it's going to be the 5th anniversary, and it's building very, very strongly within the CONCACAF region, and especially because, well, yesterday you had a game against Colombia, which has a very strong women's team. But you're usually the Mexican national team usually plays the United States, which is the strongest women's team in the world, and it really represents what you guys have been building from the ground up in the development part, right? You see the outcome when you have to go play really tough games against the US or Canada in the CONCACAF region.
Exactly, that's the leverage, right? And that's an opportunity to keep on growing. There's no way back. It's just keep growing. At the end, we understand that we are the highest growing league in Mexico and Latin America. We are the best league right now in Latin America, and we just started, as you said, 4 years ago. And Costa Rica, Colombia, they had a first experience, and they had to stop and learn again. The NWSL is the 3rd attempt, right? So we understand best practices, we learn from the mistakes, and something we were talking with Em, no? It's important to share insights, share information to grow the game all together. And then, as one of my friends were talking yesterday, in 10 years we will fight each other, but right now we have to build together in order to grow the game. No?
Thomas, as a consultant, I think that you can really see from a broader and more general overview what are the specific aspects of women's football that can be leveraged to create a truly differentiated product from the men's game for all stakeholders in fan engagement, in commercial value, sponsorships, viewership, in general?
Yeah, I think it's very important to ask yourself that question and be very conscious about it. There's a lot of opportunities for maybe quicker wins when you replicate or when you work with men's football or when you try to use the formula that already exists. But I think in every decision you make, there's an opportunity to think, how do we make sure we don't lose the specificity and the unique value that women's football can contribute on top of that? So a few examples, but I think we talked about men's clubs starting women's teams. That's always seen as a great asset and a driver of growth for domestic football in given countries because they bring existing fan bases, they bring funds on a scale that women's football has not experienced yet, and so it helps grow the game. But what it can create is some imbalance competitively with the clubs that were already there, or maybe new systems that are maybe less sustainable when it comes to profitability and making sure the investment is sustainable, like some clubs had managed, independent clubs had managed to achieve before. So it's important to learn from what's already there and what makes it unique and not switch everything almost to the other side. You mentioned, I think, sponsors in your question. Again, a quick win, if you're a club and you have both teams and you're starting your women's team, it's easy to say to your existing sponsor on the men's team, do you mind putting a small percentage more to get a whole new property, which is the women's team? It's easy and it can bring, and I'm not saying it shouldn't be done, but it's also one to consider. But should I also be looking for specific sponsors that value my women's team because it brings a distinct quality? It's more family oriented. It has players that are more approachable that I can leverage in my advertising or in building my brand image. So I think the idea of really making that conscious decision each time is important. I think we'll move on to broadcasting in a second, but again, that's another idea. The Zone is coming in, bringing new narratives, new ways of doing things, and not necessarily replicating. And we know women's football audiences are more digitally savvy. More of them have watched games online, live. There's a higher percentage because of platforms like the FA Player, Ata Football, etc. So leverage that rather than maybe go back to what's always been done, what's always been agreed in terms of broadcasting and creating a product. So really being conscious in using what makes women's football unique, I think, is important.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit about focusing on the potential growth and not just about the current size of the game itself. Obviously, because traditionally and historically, men's football has had a lot more years. As a sponsor, I'm willing to talk. I can say I feel proud to be head of marketing for a brand that treats both female and our male national teams equally regarding kids, regarding financial incentives and everything. We thrive on treating both teams equally, and I think that's the future because we've seen with hard data the potential that women's football has, and I'm sure that Arvesa, you guys at the Zone have seen it too, and that's why you're leveraging that and the partnership with the UEFA, and I would really love to talk about that since I have both you and Emma here. And in first person, you can tell us how that's happening and how it's becoming a success for both your organizations, right?
Yeah. So actually, before we jump into the specifics of the partnership, I did just want to touch on the incremental point and the point of having a vision. When we sat down with a few of our internal members at DAZN, the first question was, okay, this is a problem in the industry. We have a responsibility. What can we do? Very quickly, that went into, this is a massive revenue driver for us in the future. And on a personal level, it's crazy to me that we're still even advocating this. It's not like there's a difference in skill set, for example. Like two of the top players in UEFA Champions League from a goal perspective. One is the most followed account on Instagram, Cristiano Ronaldo. The other one is a Norwegian, Ada Hegerberg, which I hope everyone here knows, but she's certainly not a household name.
Should we open a poll right now? A race of hands. Who knows Ada Hegerberg? Okay.
See, that's
Yeah, I don't see that many.
not even everyone. And
Yeah, it's not
the
even
football
everyone.
summit, right? So that's a massive problem. And the skill is there. We just need to, again, through visibility, through coverage, really close that gap. And it is going to be incremental. For example, if we got her to become a household name, there's opportunity for sponsorship. We give her a voice. She can advocate for others. She's already doing a lot in that space, but it's a responsibility of us all. Why are we all not following her story? Why are we not telling her story? What are the journalists saying about it? What are the fans doing about it? You know, this actually brings us on to our anthem, which I'd like to play a video if we can.
Yes.
Which all talks to this point around more eyes. With more eyes, we all rise. So if we can just play that video, please.
The more eyes. The more eyes, the more
Right.
likes. The more likes, the more tweets. More tweets, more fans, and more fans for more seats. A full house means more noise. More heads getting turned. More cameras, more angles, more pundits, more press. More headlines, more airtime. More billboards, more big time. More sponsors, more shoots, more signature drinks. More little shirts and more little leads. With big dreams of golden gloves and golden balls. Well done, kid. More seeing them winning that. More stay playing, more keep it up. More pitches open, more try it out. More future champs for teams to scout. More inspired to referee. More storytellers help us see. More coaches crafting how we play. More decision makers forge the way. More ball curling, far reaching, near missing, risk taking, net bursting, gravity defying, jaw dropping football. We all rise. With more eyes.
That gives me goosebumps.
Me too.
So exciting. So yes, so just to speak about our partnership a little bit, we've basically taken on UEFA for 4 seasons. This is a 3-way partnership with YouTube as well. We wanted to really, put our money where our mouth is, and the first 2 seasons are going to be completely free on our YouTube channel. The purpose of that is exactly what we've been speaking about. Make it accessible, make it visible, and the fans now need to just come and watch. Mm-hmm. And then in the last 2 seasons, there'll still be some matches that are going to be on our YouTube channel, but the idea is to then transfer that audience onto DAZN, commercialize, monetize, which is the ultimate game, of course. It's definitely been, it's been extremely exciting to work on. There was a very visible passion coming through all our team members jointly through this. But what's most exciting is that it's the first time that we're consolidating all the matches onto one platform. One location. It's free for the first time, and everyone just needs to come and watch now. There's not much that I can say about this right now, but the sponsorship interest has been incredible. So to your point around the opportunity is already here. We just haven't tapped into it. It's been very exciting for us.
I also think that it's very important to highlight the fact that these tournaments every year, like I was a witness that last season, end of last season, so May, in a few months ago, the women's jersey of FC Barcelona was sold out. Exactly. Sold out. Not the men's, the women's who won the treble, and they only had it with the women's sponsor. They only had it in the women's fit, but it was sold out, and men were buying it in large, extra large, double XL to have it because they were proud. And I'm talking a lot of men wearing the women's FC Barcelona jersey. So we were talking about it earlier. We would think that women's football, women audience, but Emma, tell them, how much is the percentage of men that actually watch women's football?
Oh, I think it's around 60% of the audience is male, which is something that we talked about.
Yeah. So the opportunity for the sponsors out there, it's there.
Yeah, but there's also a huge female audience that watches men's football as well. So we have to kind of the balance there to grow the whole game, as football has two sides. We don't just need to consider what is good for women's football, but also is vice versa. We want more women to watch, to enjoy, to work in the whole sport, not just in women's game. And I think that's an important message to put out there, that there are lots of roles, possibilities, and opportunities across the whole
industry.
Yeah, the whole industry, and also fans as well. They want to be able to be fans of women's football and men's football. And even partnerships like the one that we have with DAZN, they just kind of instill that, because now we're putting forward a product all the time to men, women, boys and girls to fall in love with football through what is essentially the best players and the best clubs in the world. They play in the Women's Champions League. And I don't think that we've ever given a platform to this competition like we will do now. It's almost been a bit of a hidden competition. It's brilliant, and you can see that if from the match, FC Barcelona played absolutely incredible football in Gothenburg in May. It was brilliant, and if I was lucky enough to be one of the probably 10 people in the stadium, unfortunately, but it wasn't
due to lack of audience. It was due to COVID.
Exactly.
Just to
this is true. But there's nothing quite that's been more exciting in women's football for a long time than what we're now doing with the Women's Champions League, and that's something that we can't do alone as UEFA. The clubs have a huge role and responsibility, but also the sponsors and the broadcasters of what we can do, because it's not just a broadcasting deal. We've revamped the whole competition, and we've made a conscious decision to have a group stage so that we can provide more visibility. So there are more matches. It's not just a knockout competition. There are more home games. There are now, I think one of the really important things is exclusive windows. We talked about kind of competing against men's football, but for the first time we will have 5 match days that don't compete with football in any other realm. So there's no other football to watch on those days, but women's football, Women's Champions League, and through DAZN and YouTube. And the fact that it's for free, and that DAZN and YouTube have understood that at the moment there is a balance between a paywall and visibility. We need to get it out there, but we also need to create an economy. So the fact that we have this balance of 2 years of having the visibility to the actual maximum. I don't know if this stat, but I understood that that's 61 games available to 4 billion people if everybody wanted to watch it at the same time. Is incredible, and it's, to be honest, I think it's a little bit unheard of in sport.
Absolutely, and that's going to be underpinned with the behind the scenes, the storytelling, the original programming. It's not just about getting it onto YouTube. It's everything. It's the full holistic ecosystem that we're completely going to throw at it, which is going to, it's a win-win situation.
Yeah, I think that we're super romantic, and we've been talking about, growing the audience, telling a story, creating that emotional bond between the story and the actual players, telling their story so you can relate, because that's how you actually create a following. But I think that everybody here wants to know, how do we make a business out of this? How do we create a return on investment? Mariana, you were giving great example about how you've done it with multifactorial investment in Liga MX, and then to wrap it up, Thomas, you can give us how we can actually leverage the investment and make this a real business for all, and to grow the sport in general. Mariana.
Yeah, I think the common word, key point here is the investment and visibility, right? So if you want to grow the game, you need to invest not only in the sports thing. Right now in Mexico, we are working in a project because we understand we need to raise up the sports level. We want to increase our profits, so we need to differentiate the product. I know I don't like to compare it with men's side, but we have a huge leverage here. That's the connection between players and fans. So, for example, in Liga MX Femenil, we have fans from the league instead of fans of the teams. I don't know if I explained myself. So
yes.
That's a huge opportunity for brands. We were talking about also for society, right? Of how we can shape up our new generations. So increasing those profits with brands, with potential sponsors, but also rising up the sports level and helping our players reach their full potential with, for example, we've partnered with the Center of Technology and Innovation. That's a unique model we have in Mexico, that we have all of these technologies that help our players, because every fan wants to watch the best show. No, it's not just advocacy we're talking about. And our clubs understand that they're investing, so they open the big stadiums because they're investing in the product. The TVs are broadcasting the games because they know they're investing in new fans. And we are investing in the sports because we know we want the best fans also. So it's not just investing in one way, it's the holistic thing that we're talking about here. And I know it's common sense, but it's still, I think we are unaware of the full potential we have. And what Thomas was saying, all these opportunities we have of learning of those formulas and being flexible and experiment new ways to reach this new audience that I think in the past panel we're talking about, that we're talking about new generations, the Generation Z, that they don't watch TV. They talk about it in social media and highlights, and that's something we need to understand and invest in that.
Thomas, you have the floor, and you have to convince everybody here now that women in football and women's football is the future.
Well, I think we've done quite a bit of that already during the discussion.
I think we can have part 2, 3, and 5 of this panel.
Exactly, but I couldn't agree more with Mariana. I think we no longer have to demonstrate the potential. The audience already exists, and there's a whole untapped market. Now it's about all of the different parts of the game stepping up, the investment coming through at all levels for us to be able to capture that. I think you gave great examples, and the video was about this. You get more eyes, then you get more sponsors, then you get more investment into the grassroots game, better players. It all works together. So I think if you only have one club investing, they might dominate the league, but they won't create an interesting product for people to watch. If you only have the league investing, but not the club supporting it, it's not going to work either. If you don't have someone being bold and like the zone and making sure that there is that quality of production, narratives behind the scenes that goes with the product, it's not going to work. So I think ultimately it needs to be all in and everyone together. But you can't wait for one another. I think the risk is that we say we all have to do it, and we'll say, okay, I'll just wait for someone else to do it. And it just takes a few people being brave to really change the game. I hope the Zone UEFA will be one of those examples. We've seen it elsewhere. We've seen, for example, in Turkey, Beşiktaş a few years ago decided to create their women's team and be the only major men's club who did it. Now, a few years later, they've just announced Fenerbahçe, Galatasaray, other clubs are going to join. So by them being bold, by people looking at them like, why are you doing this? And then already believing that it was an investment and a long-term potential, they actually created change. So I think the change is here. It's just about people jumping on boards and being brave and doing it and not waiting for anyone else to do it. I think that's the main message.
Yeah, well, I think at the end of the day, everybody here today is a football lover, and it's an ecosystem that, feeds each other. Men's football to women's and vice versa. So I think it's up to all of us to be part of the game and create one game, one sport, and support each other and keep growing the business for all of us at the end of the day. Thank you so much, everybody, and thank you to the audience for being here today. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Eugenia.
Thank you all.
Thank you very much indeed, Eugenia. And just from me as well, I mean, I think you're getting a lot of love on the WFS app, by the way, about this particular discussion. You know, I think your point, particularly, Tom, about being brave is so very key. And you said it right at the end, Eugenia. So we shouldn't be calling this women's football. We should be calling it football, because that's what it is. And it is one global game. And it should absolutely stand on its own 2 feet. And hopefully the next few years will show it really taking those steps. And already we're seeing examples of that. I mentioned before what we're doing in the UK, but of course DAZN doing some fantastic work in Europe as well. And I think, speaking with my Sky Sports hat on, I know that you're about to enter the UK rights market in a big way sometime soon, but I think you put that to one side, don't you? Think, what is the greater good here? And we have a responsibility, along with all the other broadcasters, to help grow this game, and you've talked to those points absolutely beautifully. So thank you very much indeed. Thank you very much again, Eugenia, for being a brilliant, brilliant moderator. Give it up once again for the panel. Thank you very much indeed, guys. And off you go. Thank you.